and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States.
Says we're so cooked.
Springfield, Ohio.
Beck says fangirls for fanboys.
In Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violent. They're eating cats. To the people. He and Biden led into our country. And they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality.
I couldn't help myself.
We have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration.
You heard that? He said the greatest.
During this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Of course you would. I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump
was during the pandemic.
The worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy.
So people,
since the
if the
Civil
Dems were in
War.
power, they would have predicted
And what
COVID
we
and
have done
stopped
is
it from
clean
happening?
up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook. A bunch of lies.
Oh, there it is.
Yo, she's attacking him way more than he's attacking her. It's
is a detailed and
it's unladylike. It is unladylike.
He's trying to trigger him. He's trying
President
to pull him
intends
in.
on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you.
She wants to bring us together by insulting Republicans and conservatives and Christians.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially.
Yeah!
And create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died.
Does Kamala remind you of anyone?
Anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We
reminded me
handed
of my
them
French
over
teacher
a
from the
country
second
where the
grade.
economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before.
She
the
reminded
pandemic
me
came
of
in.
every loose
Nobody's
hoe
ever
I
seen
banged
anything
during
like
the
it.
rave
We
scene
made
who was looking for a place to
ventilators
crash.
for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible.
Just someone put her in a
and
suit.
People give me credit for rebuilding
Goodbye,
the
you
military.
two.
They give me credit for a lot of things.
Hello,
but not
Rogue
enough credit
Radio.
for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. but I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
Rogue Radio,
So,
come on over to Rumble if you got an account.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit.
I want to see evidence
16
that she had a
Nobel
plan and that
laureates
she
have
actually showed it to
described
someone else.
His economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors,
He
the
got
top
it off.
professors,
I
think
like
my
that.
plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create
Kamala has
jobs
done
and create a
nothing
lot of
economically.
Good, solid money for
Well,
our
that's because she's the
for
vice
our country.
president, and they
And just to
historically don't
finish
do it.
off,
Right.
she
But I'm saying
doesn't have a plan.
that's a statement. She
copied
doesn't have any
Biden's
experience.
plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing,
'cause
medication.
we're gonna buy American.
Arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000.
Monique says, raise the
Do you believe
tariffs.
Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
There we go.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country
need my bacon.
are absolutely
Well,
dying
I
with
just
what
had
they've
bacon.
done.
I only
They've
took a bite and
destroyed
threw
the
another 12
economy.
pieces
And
away.
all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their
I hate how he
economy
says
was
those.
terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for
Better
your
than-
response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump
boy.
administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America.
Didn't answer
He
the question.
invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military. Basically
Welcome
sold
in,
us
Rogue
out.
Radio, over to
When
Rumble.
a policy about China should
Rumble.
be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies,
Look,
focusing
that-
on investing in American-based
What
technology
I had said earlier
so
was
that
mean
we win
about
the
her.
race on AI, on
But-
quantum computing, focusing on what
Steve,
we need to do to support
look at her.
America's workforce
Listen
so
to
that
her.
we don't end up having
Do you really think she's
going
gonna
to
do a good job as president?
in terms of workers'
Um,
rights.
based
But
off
what
what I
Donald
know
Trump
about her,
did, let's
no.
talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that she was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID?
We didn't know
President
then,
Trump will
though.
respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's if she ever got elected, she'd change it.
Oh, we're
And
photoshopping
it
that
will
on her.
Be the end
We're
of our
photoshopping
country.
that on her.
She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she
Well
has,
said.
destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often
Ooh.
touted that you were able to
A
kill
little
Roe
light
v.
topic
Wade
at the beginning of
last
our-
year. You said that you
Wait a
were
minute.
proud to be the most pro-life president in
They
American
need an
history.
audience, man.
Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion
there a
because
question
you've
here?
changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that.
He did
because
say that.
predominates because they're radical. The Democrats
Although I
are
do,
radical
I think
in
he has
that.
the wrong
And
state. I think
her
regular
vice
Virginia.
presidential
So
pick,
it's-
which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe
He's
v.
really doing a
Wade
good job of staying on
into the
task tonight.
states. And
Yeah.
through the
I agree.
genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had
That's a
great
fact,
courage
Tony.
in doing it. And I give
Person's position
tremendous
is no
credit to
abortion.
those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
See,
Madam Vice
okay,
President,
Yo,
this
we
is
did
so
the
not-
issue.
that is fucked. That is fucked
Well,
up
as I
because
said,
he
you're gonna
didn't
hear
say
about the
that. He
lies,
didn't say that
and
was the
that's
law.
not actually
He's saying
a
politicians
surprising
are
fact.
fighting for that,
Let's understand how we got here.
and so she should know
Donald
better than
Trump
to correct him like that.
hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Notice she didn't
And they
correct
did exactly
Kamala Harris on her
as he
bad
intended.
economic stuff.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides
Folks,
prison
if you're
for
not already
life.
subscribed to the channel over on
Trump
Rumble,
abortion
please
bans
do
that make
so.
no
Maybe drop a
exception
like
even
as
for
well.
rape and incest.
please check
which
us
understand
out,
what that
yo.
means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around
That
our
never
country.
flies. The
You
only
wanna
people
talk
who
about
ever
this
want
is
to hear
what
that
people
are
wanted?
hyper-liberal women.
Pregnant women
The
who
idea
want
that
to
men
carry
can't speak on
a
abortion.
pregnancy to term,
She
suffering
really
from a
does have a hard
miscarriage,
time,
being
like,
denied
speaking
care
in
in an
public. I didn't
emergency room
realize that
because the
about her. Like,
healthcare
I did
providers
realize
are
it, but
afraid they might
yeah.
go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to
So
carry a
those are the
pregnancy to
exceptions we're
term.
speaking about.
They
Then.
don't want that. And I pledge to you,
DT Dub
when
says, are we going to
Congress
see more
passes
Rumble
a bill
content come over to the
put
better
back
platform?
in place the protections
I'd be
of
into
Roe
it.
v. Wade, as
Yeah.
President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his
No, he
Project
won't. He's
2025,
literally just said
there
that,
would be
basically.
a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart.
Her stance
And they
is
wanted it back in the states, and I did something that nobody
pro-choice
thought was
until the end
possible.
of days.
The
His
states are now
stance
voting.
is
What
local
she says
areas get
is
to vote
an
on what they want.
absolute lie. And as far as the
I just don't
abortion
see how
ban,
that his
no,
stance isn't
I'm
better.
not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter.
You see what I
because
mean?
This issue
Yeah, no,
has now
absolutely.
been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme
See,
Court.
that's the
So all
Trump
these
I
students
like.
got,
I like Trump who's...
taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that
DT
they
Dub says,
talked about
imagine
that,
being mad
that they
'cause you
talked
can't
about
kill a
abortion.
baby.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
Thank you. A fair
absolutely
question.
support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying
wish
a
I could put
pregnancy to
Rumble
term
quotes
and,
up.
and asking
Yeah.
for an abortion.
Rogue
That
Radio
is
says,
not
I don't
happening.
know,
It's
so
insulting
far,
to
Trump
the women of
has been
America.
saying
And
everything
understand
with
what has been
tact.
happening under
A
Donald
little
Trump's
bite,
abortion
but toned
bans.
down for most
Couples
part.
who
And it may be
pray
too early in the debate to say
and
that. Yeah.
dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. what is happening in our country. Working people, working
Well,
women.
would you support
who
any
are working
restrictions?
1 or 2
Was the
jobs,
question.
who can barely afford
I
childcare
guarantee this
as it
woman doesn't
is,
ask again.
have to travel to another
Oh yeah, she's not
state
going to push that. She'll push
to
every
get on
question
a
with
plane
Trump.
sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford
she
to
gonna
do
cry?
it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not. The
She's
majority
just
of
pretending to be
Americans
emotional about it.
believe
She's
in a
pretending to
woman's right
care
make
of the
decisions
about the
her
women
own
of
body.
America. It's an old.
And that is why
It's an old trick.
in
Izzy,
every
what up,
state
brother?
where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both,
Kamala
the people
MS.
of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a
Thank
leader.
you, Dubs.
In fact, when they got a very
Rumble
negative decision
Studio,
on
eh?
IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her
Why-
that
why
question?
don't you answer
That's the
the
problem.
question, would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you
could
veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month.
Oh,
the 8th
wow.
month,
He's
the
going
9th
for
month,
it right
and
now.
probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor
scared
of
to
Virginia
say it.
said we put
I
the
mean,
baby
he's scared to
aside,
say it,
and then
but
we
she's scared to say
determine
it,
what
too.
we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an
Oh,
issue that's important to
I wish we could
Republicans,
pause it
Democrats,
right now.
voters across the
Have a
board
talk about
in
what
this
just
country.
went down.
Vice President
breaking
Harris,
that
you were
down,
tasked
it's
by
so
President
subtle what
Biden
happened.
with getting to the
Oh, no,
root causes
absolutely.
of
He
migration
spoke to
from
the
Central
issue.
America. We
He
know that illegal
rebutted
border crossings reached a
effectively.
record high in the Biden administration.
But
This
notice how
past
she
June,
wouldn't
President
reject
Biden imposed tough
the
new
idea of
asylum
8th or
restrictions. We
9th,
know the numbers
because she
since
wants
then
to
have
keep her
dropped
hyper-liberal,
significantly.
hyper-left,
But my question to you tonight is, why did the
hyper-abortion-crazed
administration
feminists
wait until
happy?
6 months before the election?
crazy
to
that she
act?
won't reject that.
And would you have done anything
No,
differently
she won't
from President
reject.
Biden on
There
this?
won't be any
So I'm the
restrictions.
only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United
sure
States
did, Bernie.
Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border
What up,
security
Pony?
bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in
She's on the
Congress
attack
and said,
tonight.
kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions. who
give me a
actually
break. She wishes there was a
addresses the
war tomorrow
problems
so
at
she
hand.
could stay in
But
office.
what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite
Because they're
you
eating cats.
to attend one of Donald
Wait,
Trump's
hold-
rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
What a
Vice
joke.
President Harris,
So
thank
I
you.
was-
President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
I was
like
waiting
to
for the
respond.
moment
Let me
where
just
she
ask, though,
tried to go
why
on the
did you try
offensive
to
on
kill
that.
that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light.
She's-
So
she
can't
wanted
talk
them
about that. People
rambling
don't
about
leave
this.
my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible
wanted them
rallies.
to
in
do that.
the history of
He did
politics.
fall for a
That's
trap.
because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject.
Yeah, they're
what
eating
they have
cats,
done
bro.
to our country by allowing these millions
heard about
and
that?
millions
No.
of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the
We'll
towns
talk
all
about it
over
when there's a
the
little
United
less.
States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
They're
eating
the immigrants.
cats.
They're catching. There are
eating-
reports of them.
They're eating the pets.
Eating
of the
people's
people
pets and
that
eating ducks
live
in the
there.
park.
And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
Springfield,
As far
Ohio.
as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say.
Yo,
They wanna bring
Springfield
our
normally
country
had a
back. They wanna
population
make
of
America great again. Very simple
60,000.
phrase. Make America
20,000
great again.
immigrants came
She's
in.
destroying this country, and if she becomes
good.
president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want
Whoa!
to clarify here, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this-
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
The people on
this is a
television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Yeah, people are saying,
Springfield city
reporting
manager
these
says
people.
there's no
There,
evidence of that.
there's
Vice President,
videos
I'll
of
let
people
you
talking
respond to
about
the
it.
rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
She's laughing. They gotta get her
this is,
laughing.
I think one of the reasons why in this election,
Get her
I
laughing,
actually
she won't
have
stop.
The endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously.
Yes!
They did
Yes!
bad things or a bad job.
Power!
They didn't fire
Strength!
one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So,
Hey,
when
look at that.
somebody
We got
does a
11
bad
people in
job,
here. Welcome
I
in to
fire
Fanboy
him.
Modeling
and
School.
you take a guy like Esther,
Welcome.
who was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Yeah!
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation.
Oh, what's wrong? You
proposal
scared,
that
moderator?
The vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history
He
of
saw
our
him
country. You
cooking
say
and he
you
wanted
would
to
use
get
the
out of there.
National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you
Ducks.
don't
Can't talk about the
trouble
ducks.
using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow.
Wowzers.
They probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
Yo, he
As you
made
know,
a
the FBI
word.
says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you
Yes.
Vice President Harris.
Booyah!
Coming from
Fight the
someone
fake
who has been
news. Fight it.
prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference.
Yes,
has been
Ro,
found
please talk about it.
liable for sexual assault, and his next big
Here we go.
court appearance is in November at his own criminal
Venezuelans.
And let's be
Watching
clear
their-
where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts.
Yeah, probably
So
because they
let's
were
talk
trumped
about
up charges.
What is important in this race? It is
And
important
clearly,
that we move
there's something
forward,
wrong with the
that we
Justice
turn
Department.
the page
Clearly.
on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs
There
of
it
the
is. There's the
American
buzz
people.
phrase, tired
Address
rhetoric,
what we need
tired
to
rhetoric.
do
Say it
about
again,
the
say it
housing
again.
shortage, which I have a plan for. Address what we must do to support our
Rogue
small
Radio
businesses.
says, I have
Address bringing down the price of
disassociated,
groceries.
for
But
long
frankly,
since
the
I've
American
heard
people are
about the
exhausted
Springfield, Ohio
with the
fiasco.
same old tired
I have to
playbook.
find a way to talk
President
about it.
Harris,
It's pretty
thank you.
fucked. It's
Excuse
effed up.
me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved
Lawfare.
with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that
That's who she
made them
looks like.
go
Yeah,
after me.
I
By the way,
guess.
Joe Biden was found
That is who she
essentially
looks like.
guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it. and
Yeah,
it's never
most of the
happened in this
cases
country.
against him
They
have
used
been
it
thrown out.
to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of
They had
weaponization
basically
of
one
the Justice
case of him
Well,
paying
let's
off
talk
his
about extreme
mistress.
and understand the context in which
not a
this
crime.
election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again.
Rogue
That's
Radio
not
says-
what it
Understand,
said.
This is
That's-
someone
Rogue Radio
who has
says the
openly
migrant
said
crime
he would
crime
terminate,
is a
I'm
problem,
quoting,
and it hasn't gone down.
the
That's one of the
Constitution of the
reasons why
United
people in
States.
Texas
That
decided
he
to
would
make their own law.
weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies.
Yo,
Someone
anyone who
has
lives in a
openly
city
expressed disdain
knows that crime is on the
for
rise.
members of our
Absolutely.
military.
You just see it for you.
Understand what it would
And
mean
so
if Donald Trump
the
were back
powers
in
that
the
be
White
have
House
been
with no
reorganizing
guardrails.
how they
Because
classify.
certainly
It's
we know
interesting.
now the court
They've
won't
been
stop him. We know J.D. Vance is
reclassifying
not gonna
how
stop him.
they
It's up
register
to the
crime.
American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris.
him.
And so, for instance, in New York,
Vice
to make
President
crime
Harris,
look
in your last
go
word
down,
for president.
they said anything that you
This is the one that weaponized, not me.
you get to
She
walk out without
weaponized.
bail
I
is not
probably took
considered
a bullet to the
are
head
worthy of being
because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to
Oh, I'm
democracy.
sorry to hear that,
They're
bro.
the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
Oh, got her.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made, but in particular, fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact,
what up,
I
Matt?
was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which
Hail,
opened
Matt.
new leases for fracking.
Hell, Matt, how are you, brother?
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
Right.
The values I bring to the importance of home ownership.
That's
knowing
very
not everybody got
stereotypical
handed
politician.
$400 million.
I remember when my daddy raised me in a coal mine.
Is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increased by 3 million homes by the end of my first term.
Matt said she
My
didn't
work
make that clear in
that is
2020. She
related
said
to
Biden wouldn't
having
ban
a
fracking.
friend when I
Right.
was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable.
Wasn't
My
the question
work
about
that is
fracking?
about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams.
Trump
My
is winning.
values
right now.
have not
Yeah.
changed.
But he
And
did
what
step
is
into a
important is that
landmine
there is
that-
a
but he
president
pulled
who
himself out.
actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting
I mean, it's his own
people
fault.
up
He has so many controversial
not
things about him.
beating
You know, it's like
people
just
down.
say anything. and get
and
called.
name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands.
Right,
the
Matt?
strength
How does
is
this
not
have
in
to do
beating
with
people down,
fracking?
it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
The question was
Trump,
fracking.
I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars. Many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that
for
stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it.
Yeah, the
She
eating
gave
dogs,
up
it's super
at
cringe,
least
man.
12 and
Very
probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now.
Oh.
If you don't mind, please.
Oh!
familiar?
Put her in her place.
She went out in Minnesota.
Yeah,
and
Matt,
wanted to
her
let
values change
criminals
every
that
week.
killed people, that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President Trump.
500 acres.
Pokey
of
says, great,
desert
3 million
land.
homes that my generation won't be able to
Lindsay,
afford
Thank you.
or move into.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer
Yeah,
of power, which, of
D-Love,
course,
what
we all
up?
know is a cornerstone of our democracy and
Finally
the
on
role of a
Rumble.
president in a moment of crisis.
D, we've
Mr.
always
President,
been on
January
Rumble.
6th, you told your
We just
supporters
never
to
share
march
the
to
link. We
Capitol.
always
You
do
said you
YouTube
would be
because we're
right there
lazy.
with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers
What
coming
up,
under
D?
attack. Aides in the West Wing say
D-Love
you
in the
watched it
house.
unfold on television off the Oval
Yeah, you guys
Office.
might as well stay
You
over
did
here
send
on
out
Rumble.
tweets, but it was more than 2 hours. before
Here's
you
what it is.
sent
I
out
just
that
wish
video
that I could
message,
actually
telling your
put
supporters to go home.
the Rumble
Is there
comments on the
anything you
screen.
regret
This is like
about
killing
what
me.
you did on that day.
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this
He's
group
tripling
of people
down
that have been
on
treated so
Jan 6.
badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be
If
called
you want,
the
I
border
can
czar
share
because
the
she's
chat
embarrassed
and
by
you
the
can
border.
bring
In
it
fact,
up
she said at the
on your
beginning,
screen.
"Oh, I'm surprised
on.
you're not talking
Have it
about the
popped
border yet."
up.
That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? What
Oh,
are
wait,
they
can I
going to be
add-
prosecuted?
Will
What
I
are
lose the
these
debate if I do
people
it?
from countries all over the world,
No,
not
you
just
shouldn't.
South America. They
Oh, you did. Never mind. Go back. Get rid of it. Get rid of
They're
it.
down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
one
ask
of
you-
those, David, one of those people going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted.
Right,
Or
thank
in
you.
Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big.
They burned down a
percentage of the
police
city of
precinct
Seattle.
in Minneapolis.
One of those people going to be prosecuted.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that
You
question.
were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National
absolutely.
Guard or soldiers.
Yeah, I agree with Matt
They
right
rejected
now.
me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me.
Kamala
it was just
has
2
clearly
weeks
been
ago.
coached to
daughter
try
has
her
a
best
tape
at
of her
tugging
saying
at
she
heartstrings
is fully
with personal
responsible for
stories
what happened.
and talk
They
of
wanna get
unity.
rid of that tape.
Comes off as extremely
It would have
rehearsed.
never happened
Yes,
if
and
Nancy
disingenuous.
Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice
Oh,
president
she's gonna
elect.
tell a
I was
sad
also
story.
An acting senator. I was there. And
My
on
dog
that day,
died.
the president of the United States
I watched my
incited
dog
a
died,
violent mob
and I watched patriotism
to
and
attack
democracy
our
end
nation's capital.
when those hillbillies came in here with their
Desecrate
silly hats.
Our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former
There was
president
no
has
death
been
on
indicted
January
and
6th. They died
impeached
down the line,
for
some of
exactly
suicide
that
from
reason.
depression.
But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing
torch bandit.
anti-Semitic hate.
Right, but he had nothing to do
And
with
what
that.
did
No, he
the
didn't have anything to
president
do with
then
that.
at the time
That was
say?
definitely the Dickie
There were fine
khaki
people on
short
each
day.
side.
They all-
Yes.
Let's remember.
Khaki. They had Starbucks
When it
and
came to
tiki
the Proud Boys, a
twitches
militia.
and khakis on.
The president said, the
Clearly
former
all working
president
a late
said,
night
stand
shift
back
at
and
Walmart.
stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
Here we
Let's
go.
not go back. We're
Buzz
not
line.
going back. It's
I'm
time
counting
to
the
turn
buzz lines
page.
because that's what
And if
she's
that
been
was a
coached
bridge
on.
too far for you, well,
Right.
there is a place
Good
in
call.
our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos.
Yo,
and to
Rumblers,
end
should
the
we stop
approach
streaming on
that is
YouTube? Let us
about
know.
Attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
He didn't say that.
Let's turn the
He
page
said
on
he said
this.
it in
Let's
reference
not
to the
go back.
economy.
Let's chart a course for the future.
She is like forever
and not
lying, and it's
go
irritating.
backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed
Right,
our
you're saying
energy
a bloodbath
business.
in-
That was where bloodbath was.
economically.
Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it.
That had nothing to do with the
I would say we would
Capitol.
both leave this debate right now. I'd like
And
to
fight.
see her go
Fist
down
fight.
to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed.
Executive- yeah.
You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh,
Come on
call
down to the
outs.
office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people,
I wanna-
unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next
That
issue,
was a
both,
good
because it really
off
brings
tangent.
us this into focus. Truth in these times.
Matt
that we're
says
living
no,
in.
stay on YouTube.
Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you
All right,
won
here you
in a
go, Mantis.
landslide.
This is gonna be your
in the
sore
past couple
point.
of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No,
2020?
I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You
But
know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about
The
an
rig
election
was
that's
on.
fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad.
tied that
And a
in.
lot of these illegal immigrants
was
coming
good.
in, they're trying to get
Yes.
them to vote. They can't even speak
tied it
English.
in.
They don't even know
You
what
did it.
country they're in practically. And
That
these
was a
people
cool
are
one that he
trying
put
to
in.
get
Sometimes
them to
it's a
vote.
little
And that's why
clunky.
they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases. in front of
When
many
did
judges,
moderators
many
No
have
judge
Republicans,
looked
so
at it
much
and
to
said
They
there's
say?
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing.
Great.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you.
Yeah!
President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won
You just
by
referred to him
President
as the
Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you
He
about
did.
something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top
Lock
lawyers
'em up!
responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote.
Lock him
Is that
up.
what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald
Okay,
Trump was
so
fired by 81
Why are we
million
getting
people.
into conjecture?
So let's be clear
Right,
about
that's
that.
all a
And
lot of this
clearly
is
he having
conjecture,
a
right?
very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair
Oh,
election.
you mean like the rigged
I'm gonna
election your
tell
party
you
did
that
last time?
I have traveled the world as
Not
vice
gonna
president
say it.
of the
I'm not
United
gonna. I'm not gonna
States.
finish that sentence. I'm not
And
gonna finish it.
world
I'm not
leaders
gonna
are
finish it.
laughing at Donald Trump.
I'm
I have
cool.
talked with military
Like
leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a
You
disgrace.
already brought these. She already said this.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over
Rogue,
again are
I will
court
do more
cases
Rumble
you have
streams. Hell yeah.
lost, because you did in fact lose that
DT
election.
Dub says, "F
It
YouTube."
leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve
The
better.
only one falling for this
I'll
is
give you
the
1 minute
most
response.
left
Hey,
women
Let me
on the
just say
planet.
about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban.
Look, you can tell she doesn't even know what he's talking
The
about.
most
That's
respected,
how
most
uneducated she is.
feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago,
Let's see you,
that if he
DT.
weren't in that debate, he'd be running on
What
Senator
did
Hurst. He
DT
got
say?
no
He's out?
votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But
Mr.
he
President.
got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being
Oh,
held
man,
in
here we
Muslim
go.
among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself.
Matt
but you
says
added,
the media
quote,
is not
"It
even
matters
trying to hide their
how,"
bias.
saying
This is so
international
blatantly rigged.
humanitarian law
We're
must be
staring at the man
respected.
behind the
Israel
curtain,
must
and he's
do more to
literally
protect
laughing in our
innocent
faces.
civilians.
I
You said
agree.
that 9
Matt
months
says
ago, now
they're
an
not even
estimated
asking her
40,000
questions
Palestinians
about
are
herself
dead.
at this
Nearly
point.
100
They're just giving her
hostages
moments
remain.
to attack.
Just
I
last
agree.
week, Prime Minister
And then,
Benjamin
every time
Netanyahu
she
said
says something
there's
that's
not a
like
deal in the making.
pseudo-realistic
President Biden
and
has
kind
not
of
been able
fake,
to break
they
through
never
this
call her on it.
stalemate. How would you do
They'll
it?
call him on anything.
Well, let's
No,
understand how we
absolutely,
got here.
absolutely agree that
On
there's a
October
clear bias
7th,
going on here. We all knew what this
Hamas,
was coming into
a
it, man.
terrorist
Yeah.
organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers.
Bro,
What we know is that
drone strike
this
from the
war
Ukrainians
must
in
end.
Russia.
It must end
you believe that?
immediately, and the way
Yeah,
it will
that's-
end is
that's
we
nuts,
need
right?
a ceasefire
Yeah.
deal, and we need the hostages out. And so we will
U-
continue
Ukraine
to work
is
around
like
the clock on
encroaching
that.
in Russian
Work
turf.
around the clock,
That
also
is insane.
understanding
You
that
never
we
think you'd see
must
that day.
chart
Yeah,
a
I
course
never
for
thought
a
I'd see the
two-state
day, man.
solution.
What is
And
happening in
that
Russia? I don't get it.
solution, there must be
Overextended,
security for the
overextended
Israeli
on a
people
war
and Israel, and
is
an equal
subsidized by
measure for the
other interests.
Palestinians.
And it's just like I
But
told
the
you when
one
we
thing I
covered it
will
at the
assure
beginning,
you
man. It's like
always,
you
I will
subsidize
always
the
give
rebels,
Israel the
and
ability
then
to
the
defend
mainline
itself,
army
in
starts to fall
particular
apart
as it
after a while.
relates
You
to,
can't
as
fight
it relates
these
to
forever
Iran
wars, and
and
it's too
any threat
expensive.
that Iran and its
Right.
proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President
decent
Trump,
answer.
how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party.
Holy
She hates
sh!
Israel. If
Can he
she's
back that up?
president,
Is that? I don't even know if
believe that
any of that is
Israel will
true.
not exist
Well,
within 2
just talking
years
about
from
what
now.
she was
And I've been
speaking
pretty
at,
good at
I believe,
predictions. I hope I'm wrong about
alma
that
mater.
one. She hates
Oh,
Israel. At the same
he
time,
calls it a
in her own
sorority
way,
party.
she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran
Right,
has
Matt, they're
$300
propagandists.
billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered
Oh, I
it very
believe it,
well,
Rogue.
actually. They had no
The
money
Iron Dome,
for
yeah.
terror. They
Oh,
were
Izzy, why
broke.
did you send me
now
this,
they're
man?
a rich nation, and now what
What
they're
is it? Is it
doing
something
is
we wanna
they're
hear about?
spreading that money
No,
around.
no, it's not. It's
Look
some
at
of
what's
the animals
happening
that are not
with the
getting eaten.
Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going
Ah.
on in the Middle East. This would have
Video
never
of it.
happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known.
Yeah, 'cause nobody does that in this debate.
Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy.
But yo,
It
the
is
whole thing
well
with the
known
animals
that he
things,
admires
like NPR was like,
dictators,
the
wants to
city
be a
manager
dictator on day
said
one, according to
nothing is
himself.
wrong, everything
It
is
is
fine.
well known
And there's all these
that
videos on the
he
internet of
said
people
of
talking
Putin
about it.
that
They're filming their
he
neighbors'
can
houses.
do
They're like,
whatever the hell he wants and
Return
go
to your
into
home,
Ukraine.
citizen. Your
It is
dog
well
was never
known that
important
he
to
said
you.
Yeah,
when
nothing to
Russia
see
went
here.
into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
yo, there's this thing of
And it is
this black guy in
absolutely
the city.
well known
He comes to
that
the city
these
council.
dictators
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He's like,
autocrats
yo,
are rooting
they're eating
for
goose
you
in
to
my
be
park,
president
yo.
again
And he's
because
like,
they're so
he's like,
clear.
when are you making money
They
off
can
of this?
manipulate
I know
you
you're making money off of this.
flattery and
He's like,
faith.
why else would you look the other
And
way?
that
And like,
is why
basically, they're not investigating
so
the animals
many
getting
military
eaten.
leaders
No,
who you
and they
have
won't,
worked
man.
with
It's an
have
election
told
season,
me
man.
you are a disgrace.
And ironically enough,
That
and
is
I'm not hating
why
on it, gas
we
has gone down
understand that
as
we
predicted
have to
during
have
this
a president
election,
who is
man.
not
They always make sure that
consistently
happens right at
weak
an election.
and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including
So
the
she can take the
importance
credit,
of
right?
upholding
Yeah.
and respecting in highest regard our military.
You know, it'd be
Vice
great if
President
Tulsi
Harris,
Gabbard
thank you.
walked out right now.
And she's the one.
I would love that. He's
caused
like,
it.
I'm gonna let my
That's
girl
weak
handle
for
this.
national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution
You
Center.
know what's
right
crazy
here
is
in
that this is
Philadelphia.
going to be
Back in
the
a moment.
only debate, because what you have here, man, and I'm going to take a shot at both of them. You have someone who rarely stays on topic, but he's doing a great job tonight. And then you have a person who cannot be confronted with topics because she's so insulated by every news media outlet on her side. It's absolutely outrageous to me, man. And listen, to all you strong black women, and I'm not saying that facetiously, defending her and going to bat for her, I know why you're doing it, and I don't hate your hustle. But here's the problem. It's so transparent. It's so transparent, and that's why you're having a hard time pulling people in line into what you're saying. You're trying to use terminology to bolster her and identify her to us. And I don't even question her race. You don't need to do that. If your candidate is solid, let them run on the issues. Let them run on the issues, bro. Just let them run on the issues. Unleash her. If she's really this badass demon of a debater that they claim that she is, they should have unleashed her a while ago, man. She should have been like 50 Cent on IG calling this fool out every chance she got.
Well, but like I said, she's running solely on vibes of this whole vibe theory where she's like, I'm not going to say what I believe in. People will just project what they want on me. I'm going to make it look like I'm the second coming because people are so happy they don't have to vote for a zombie man anymore.
Exactly.
Right. But the question is, I would love to round up every Democrat, including her, who said at the time, Biden's fine. He's totally fine. He's totally okay. And then a week later said he was senile.
Bro, I would love that to have been a question. Kamala, how do you now react to, after years of saying the president is fine, to then questioning his wherewithal, his mental acuity because of a failed debate?
Right, and also she had to have seen it. Her office is right down the hall from him, so she had to at some point seen him acting weird, being out of it, some crap like that.
Bro, I'm going to take this to a place where no one expects it, right? I'm going to rally for the third-party voters. Is this what you want? Do we want to continue having to split our vote amongst these two parties? I'm not saying that they're viable candidates, third party right now. Lord knows that there aren't, right? But the fact of the matter is they fucked Bernie, right? They fucked Bernie.
That was the thing that finally made me give up the Democratic Party. Because the fact that they didn't give him a fair shake, and it was proven that the Democratic Party, his own party, was actively cheating against him.
Not only were they were rallying against him, they fucked RFK, man. They didn't give their own constituents a chance to actually primary anyone so they can slot her in. And whatever comes next, that's your fault. Same thing can be said about Trump, man. Whatever comes next, instead of just bringing the country together under what was a historic moment of this man nearly dying, he fell back into old debate tactics. Now, I'm not criticizing him for being who he is. Well, I guess I am. But the fact of the matter is, if I was a moderator, the questions would be fair and balanced. You want to do ad hominem? Then we're going to do it through and through. Kamala, did you lie to the American people about the mental acuity of the president?
Yeah, there would be hardball questions across the board. I agree with you. That's the real way they should do it. But remember, as Matt Camp pointed out, these people are not journalists; they're propagandists, and they're paid to screw him over and to give her softball. So, Matt says, right, Steve, this will be the only debate. It's terrible. It's true because they should debate and then later on get used to each other and prepare for a second debate. And that's where it gets real interesting.
And their response to this, you're correct. I'm sorry, my brother. Go ahead. Continue.
No, do your thing.
So, and you're correct. And here's the thing. I'm all about the narrative. I'm all about the spin, all of that stuff, man. It's the gift that God gave me, and I could point it out to you. They already had this shit in the bottle, and I heard one of her fucking flunkies say it. Well, you got to remember, we put this candidacy came together so quickly. So there really hasn't been time for her to get out and speak about the issues. Whose fucking fault is that?
Right.
You do some shady shit, then you use that same energy to make it seem as if though she doesn't have to face the American people. She needs to be uniting the country. Send her to battlegrounds to speak in front of hostile audiences.
She should have massive rallies. And like you said, no one shows up to her rallies. Actually, no, that's not false. She doesn't actually have them. She goes to states, waves, and doesn't speak. It's totally shameful and crazy and insane. And so I agree with you that we need a group of people who are going to throw hard balls and curve balls at them constantly and just see if they can survive. And the mere fact that we live in this propaganda state where one channel or the other is helping a candidate out, it's totally wrong. It's totally effed out.
And it's corrupt. It's corrupt.
And look, I see they're back on, but real quick, I gotta say this. I am not calling you out right now. What I am just pointing out is that, like, I know you have doubts that the last election was rigged, but I just want to point out the games the Democrats are playing right now. Does it seem fair?
No. So first of all, I don't have problems assuming or even intellectualizing that there's corruption, because I believe everything is corrupt. What I have always had an issue with is you can't have weak players when you're making a play like that, right? You can't have fucking Giuliani off running his yap and now he's getting sued into the ground by Dominion, right? Because there's discovery. That's what I've always been telling my brother. You say some shit, you got to be able to back that shit up. Now, maybe Trump had a legitimate claim and he should have punched Giuliani in the mouth like, yo, shut the fuck up. You're about to shit on what I'm trying to do right now. You're saying some shit that has nothing to do with what I got going on. So I get what you're saying. I'm willing to lend some intellectualism to it. But I would also reply to this, right? I would also say this. We all knew he was going to run again. Now, had I been in his cabinet, I'd be like, you know what? Let's drop this whole stop the steal thing. Let's focus on I'll see you in 4 years when you're begging me to come back in, when you're begging me to restore order at the border, when you're begging me to save you from these people. I will answer that call. You know why Trump got elected the first time, my brother? Because of the shit he's saying right now. I told my wife this once. Remember right after the friggin' first time they tried to impeach him or whatever, man. Yeah. He came back in, and I remember it was his first address. He's sitting down, and they asked him, "What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about this?" And he said something that resonated with every American, whether they want to admit it or not. He looked right in the camera. He's like, "I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it all." And that's why Trump got elected. It's the assurity at which he says things and these absolutes. Like that's his superpower. That's his. It's literally the dark side of Obama. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but Obama spoke in symbolism. Trump speaks in straight up absolutes. And that's what he should be focused on, man. Like saying exactly what people want to hear. If it's the truth, I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to be the one to fix it. That's why they're so scared of him. That's why they fear him, because they want to keep this system of, well, here's the thing, Rory. So we're going to try to get those egg prices down for you, but you got to work with us.
Right. and he was the man who was going to get it done. I totally feel you, man. I totally feel you. So let's see what's going on there.
What happened, Rogue? There's no mods here. You didn't piss anyone off.
No, you didn't piss anyone off. We love you. What are you talking about?
Happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's
and when
eastern
she does
flank,
speak, she says idiotic things referring to
Romania.
Kamala.
And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Matt, I follow you on Twitter.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have
Yeah, I've
lost
seen you on
300,000
X
men
before. I've seen your gym
and
pics.
women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They
What
don't ever
kind-
talk
what kind
about
of got
that. He's got
taken?
nuclear weapons.
No,
Nobody ever
speak
thinks
your
about
mind,
that.
bro. Speak your
And
mind.
eventually, maybe he'll
I'll be right
use
back.
them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he
Yeah,
started
Rogue,
the war.
don't ever behave.
Because
Be yourself.
Everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later.
Vice
And
President-
that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said you
Rogue
went to
says,
negotiate with
"Ow,
Vladimir
someone
Putin."
put
Vice President
Steve out,
Harris, has
'cause
he
I'm on
never met
fire.
Vladimir Putin to clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fella.
Rogue, Rumble
And
is
that
a
is
free
another one.
speech platform. Says
When I
TJ
went to
Davis.
meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor
Yeah,
our
Matt, I
enemies
love that he
because
said that.
you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States
Yeah,
is
because strong
commander
men
in
are
chief.
dangerous.
And the American people have a right to
It's
rely
more of this feminist
on a
bullshit.
president who understands
Yeah, I
the
just sent you a message.
significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and
I love it
ensuring
over
we
here, man. We should
stand
be on
up
Rumble
for
more
our
often, man.
principles and not
Imagine
settle
if we-
Yeah,
for
Rumble's
the-
great.
for the benefit
Imagine if we were over
of
here when I was
personal
drinking.
flattery.
You talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment
Guy
here on
looks like a
Capitol Hill honoring the
supervillain from
soldiers
X-Men.
who died.
Yo,
in the
doesn't
chaotic
he?
withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to
He's
ask
some
the Vice
evil
President,
senator who's gonna
do you
Oh,
believe
ban
that you
mutants.
have any
You look
responsibility
like
in the way
Nightcrawler's
that
dad.
withdrawal
That's what
played
it
out?
is.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan.
DC versus
4
Trump.
presidents said they would, and
All
Joe
right,
Biden
I'll
did.
deem-
And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
Let's hear her
But let's
say
understand
something
how we
stupid.
got to where
She's
we
about
are.
to say something stupid.
Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated
She didn't finish that
one
thought.
of the weakest deals you can
She was going
imagine. He
someplace
calls
stupid.
himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the
right,
Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive.
Yo, you do deals with the
respected
people who have
world
power.
leaders.
You don't just write
And
them off and go, oh, they're
this
terrorists.
Former president as
The
president,
Taliban is
invited
the people
them
who are in actual
to
control of
Camp
Afghanistan, not the
David
government.
because
Yeah.
he
Which is
does
why
not,
you should
again,
negotiate with them.
appreciate the
Or talk to them,
role
you know?
and responsibility
No, I get you.
of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the
There
point
it
of
is.
how he
There's
has
the narrative.
consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen
She
soldiers.
has a speech voice
and the
when she's
work
doing
that
that.
we must do to
Yeah.
uphold
She
the
changes her
strength
accent.
and the
Shit, it's a tell,
respect
it's a
of the
tell.
United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the
Yeah,
negotiations
thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul
I
was the
love it.
head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months,
Yeah, he did
we
do
had
that. He
nobody
did
killed.
text him
We did have
a
an
picture of his
agreement
house, being
negotiated
like,
by
I know
Mike
where you live.
Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military
Yo,
equipment
gear.
behind.
Yeah, that's
And just
fucking
to
crazy.
finish,
It's crazy
they
that we left the gear. That
blew
is
it.
insane.
The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I wanna move
and
on.
these people did
No,
the
let's
worst
not move on.
withdrawal. And
Yeah,
in
let
my
him
opinion,
cook.
The most embarrassing
You brought it
moment
up.
in
You
the
brought it
history of
up, pretty
country.
boy.
And by the way,
David
that's why
Muir, you
Russia
brought it the
attacked
fuck up.
Ukraine, because they saw how
Let's do this.
incompetent she.
You want to talk
and
about
her boss
Afghanistan?
are.
Here we are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this
She
country.
looked
Mr.
flabbergasted.
President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years
Here
ago
we go.
when she
They
happened to
don't-
turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the
Say it,
racial
man.
identity
Why did
of your
you
opponent?
hide?
He was
And
at a
I don't
race.
care. I don't care what she is. I don't care.
He was at a journalist thing
You
about
make a
black
big deal out of
journalists.
something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I know that she's black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
He just
President
said
Harris, your
that.
thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent.
They keep leaning on that.
property
They
to
keep
black
leaning on
families.
investigations.
Let's
that are
remember,
against-
this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the
This is
execution
a weak
five
viewpoint that he
young
did.
Black
it
and
was a
Latino
stupid move,
boys
man. It was
who
a
were
stupid
innocent,
move.
the Central Park Five.
You can't
Took out a
protect them from this
full-page
stuff.
ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual.
Wait,
who
he
spread
did? He put
bird
out a
lies
full-page
about the
ad?
first black
Yeah.
president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this.
But they want better than
Want
you.
someone who understands, as I do,
Right.
I
That's
travel our country.
this is the problem. I understand.
We
I'm not
see in
blind.
each
I see all the
other
flaws in
a
Trump.
friend. We
However,
see
the
in each other
alternative
a neighbor.
is someone who
We
doesn't
don't
deserve to be
want
president.
A leader who is constantly
what do we do?
trying to have
Rose said,
Americans
"Bitch ain't
point
black,
their
she
fingers
East
at
Indian."
each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just
Yeah.
have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations
I'm not gonna
and the
front.
ambitions
She's
and
black.
the dreams of the American
Yeah.
people. Knowing
I
that
mean, she's
regardless
both.
of
Obviously, she's
people's
both,
color
but,
or the language their grandmother speaks,
she's
we all
always
have
repped
the same
blackness.
dreams
She's
and
always she
aspirations,
she
and
was
our
in a black
president
sorority, like you know what I'm
invests
saying.
in
won't take that
those,
away from
not
her.
in hate and
In
division.
fact, I'm not the
Vice
gatekeeper of
President
blackness,
Harris, thank you.
but I have a co-host
President Trump,
who
this
is.
is now your third time.
Where is
This is
he?
the
I
most
want to hear
divisive
talk about-
presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies
Yeah, I
in the
mean, that
history
is-
of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy.
Yo,
And
Izzy says
remember
she's
this,
white. If you ask me,
she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman. She says she is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible
good point,
economy
Matt.
because
Yo,
inflation
very
has
good point,
made it
Matt.
so bad,
Very good point.
and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald
I don't
Trump.
know.
And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in
we
what
go.
is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism.
This is where Obama stepped
about
in.
what we
You
can
better
do
say this, you
instead of
dummy.
always disparaging the American people. I believe.
well, yo,
in
no
what we
one's
can
more
do to
convincing than
strengthen our small
Barack
businesses,
Obama.
which
Than
is
Barack
why I
Obama
have
when
a
he's talking about
plan.
hope and
Let's talk
stuff.
about our
Oh man,
plans.
forget about it.
And
When he
he's
was
like,
at
and
PNC,
let's
I was
compare
like,
the plans.
I believe,
have
I
a plan
believe.
he says
to
it's
give
just like
startup
when I was a boy,
businesses
I used to dream of hope.
$50,000 tax
Like,
deduction
something like that, like, you
to
believe it, you
pursue
believe it,
their
right?
ambitions, their innovation, their
She's
ideas,
not
their hard
nearly
work.
doing a good
I
job.
have a plan,
at that, what he does.
$6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most
But you know
critical
what it
stage
is?
of your child's development.
And the
I
reason
have
I'm
a
going to talk
plan
over this is because
that
he's
is
just
about
filibustering right now.
allowing
Yeah.
people to be able
Obama
to
would be
pursue
the
what has
perfect
been
guy
fleeting
to
in terms of the
villain
American
for sci-fi.
dream by
You and I grew up
offering
on sci-fi.
a help
He's
with
that
down payment of
euphoric, and you're like,
$25,000
I
down
would
payment
bring
assistance
peace to
for
this
first-time
world
home buyers.
by
That's the kind of
killing you
conversation I
all.
believe
Yes,
that
exactly.
people really want tonight.
Oh my God, he'd be
As
great.
opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump.
No, you don't. No,
President
no,
Trump
we're gonna
has
move
said
on.
something
We're
twice that I need to
gonna move
respond
on.
to.
I'm sorry,
I
we're
just
going
need
to
to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's
It
not
is.
very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are
Up until
working on
recently,
things,
I was on
we're gonna
it.
do
I
and
didn't-
we're
I
gonna
don't- I
replace
didn't hate
But
it, you know.
Remember this.
I
inherited
no,
Obamacare
and I understood
because
why you did it, so
Democrats
thank you.
wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be? Never going to be great. Or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We
Hey,
read
good
about the bad
people.
ones. We
Yeah,
had some
you
real
got a
bad
good
ones
guy.
too, and so did they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? and I saved it. I did the right thing, but it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that.
I mean, this is a
And
fine
you'll be
answer.
hearing about
This is a
it in the
totally
not
fine.
too
They're trying to
distant
make it look
future.
like he's
Vice
an
President
idiot.
Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president,
She's lost a lot of
60
liberal
times
votes.
He tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't.
That was a pretty baller night.
No, you don't.
That was
No, you
baller.
don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to
Rogue
deny
Radio
people
says
with
she
pre-existing
laughs like a
conditions.
white bitch.
I don't have
She
to
might
tell
as
people
well be.
watching tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent
remember
had
that, actually.
diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass his
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of...
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump,
Exactly how
thank
you
you. We have
expect
another
DEI
issue that we'd like
hires
to
to
get
be
to that's
treated.
important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters.
That's what
and
Matt said. Then
climate
Matt said
change.
John McCain
President
was a
Trump, with
fucking
regard to
joke.
the environment, you say that we have
Oh,
to
Then
have
he
says-
clean air and clean water. Vice President
Then it
Harris,
says
you call climate change
we
an
when it's a
existential
positive,
threat.
but
The question to you
on a
both
negative,
tonight is,
it's
what
not.
would you do
I'm
to
not
fight
Biden.
climate
Yes.
change? And
I
Vice
agree.
President
She
Harris,
takes credit
we'll
for all the
start
good
with you.
stuff.
1 minute for you each.
Steve, what were you going to say
Well,
about
the
Matt?
former president had said
No, I was
climate
just
change is a
laughing at
hoax.
Matt and the John McCain.
And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy while we have
Hey,
also
Dragon Lady, welcome.
increased domestic gas production
welcome.
to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Wow. So thoughts, my man. We're about to see closing thoughts.
So thus far, it's gone exactly the way I thought. I really was waiting for him to bring up the portion about her and the rest of her cohort lying about Biden's mental stability, and that hasn't happened. So that's a miss for him. Otherwise, in that, man, and you know, I will critique Trump like nobody's business. I think he did amazing tonight. I think he's doing amazing tonight, considering going into hostile territory. I think, as I expected, there were going to be softball questions for her, and there were going to be a lot of fact checking, as Matt pointed out, for Trump. There's nothing fair about this debate in the traditional sense, and it's a shame that it's the only one we're going to get. Now, the real question to me is going to be, what does Kamala do after this debate? Does she start going to places where she can be asked harder questions? No, she's not going to do that. So this is it. If you were asking me, if
you think she's going back to having a vibe fall?
Yeah, she's going back into the safety of the bosom of CNN, MSNBC, and every other person that's supporting her. And Donald Trump will probably do something similar, but he's willing to go across the aisle. So that's my official. I think he did great tonight. There was nothing that she said that really surprised me or blew my mind. And there were some clear paths of attack she could have gone on tonight, just in regards to policy and just in regards to his record as president. And she didn't do that. So I'm going to give the W thus far. I think Trump's got it in the bag, man. Now, when we wake up tomorrow, pay attention to what your Uncle Steve says. Tomorrow, MSNBC, they will have a black woman up there, some well-meaning sister. You see, and I mean that well-meaning sister, right? Someone that believes what you're saying is correct. And they're going to be talking about how she cooked them all night long.
Right.
That's not what happened, man. It isn't. It isn't. And also, to you fucking bitch ass motherfuckers out there, you fucking bitch ass black commentators that fucking do dumbass fucking videos. I don't know if you're up on this shit yet. The fucking conservative hairline. They have pictures of what a black conservative looks like, and it's always some Neil deGrasse looking motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Fuck you motherfuckers, yeah. Because I got a straight hairline. I'm doing good. Y'all are just weak-willed when it comes to this shit. The only black people I'm going to listen to in regards to this debate have to be from the revolutionary community. They have to be from the Pan-African community, because at least those brothers and sisters are willing to be serious and honest about their critique of Kamala. She ain't gonna do shit for you. Sorry, nigga. You been lied to. She ain't gonna do shit for you, bro.
No, it's true. She's gonna go. If she wins, she's gonna go in autopilot. She's gonna let the party decide what happens, and she's gonna be going with the flow. She's just gonna be happy to be there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
She has not shown any strong policy. Although, I'm like you said, tomorrow a bunch of liberals are gonna be like, "Yo, she's so stunning and brave and amazing."
How she stared down death.
I will say she did stand up to, for instance, she stood up to him better than, say, Joe Biden would have. Like, Joe Biden's
this would have been a
a
murder.
bumbling fool, right? So she was able to talk. I still don't see a lot of policy in what she's saying. She has ideas of policies, but then she goes to, like you said, the sob story, the touching women's emotions. And she's just like, we need to unify. We need to stop having leaders that divide us. We need to break through doors, not put up walls. That kind of shit. And like, it does nothing for me. It does nothing for society. But then again, that doesn't stop people from voting for idiots who do nothing for society. So we'll see. This is a shame that it is a real shame that this is the only debate.
So you said something once on Fanboy about idiots falling upwards. I had made a defense. I was like, there has to be some semblance of intelligence in regards to Kamala because she's made it so far in life. And I still stand by that point. But based off of what I'm seeing tonight, man, like I said, I will only be listening to the opinions of the revolutionary Black community, the Pan-African community, because at least they are willing to critique her. Everyone else that's just going to fall in line and go on the she cooked them fest. You're not being intellectually honest in what happened on this debate, man. They both made valid points against each other. I think he made stronger points, and he won the night thus far by not going on tangents, like long tangents.
Right, right. And actually, the ones that he did, I actually appreciated. They were short. Let's see.
Closing statements and Vice President Harris. We begin.
There we go. Bombshells.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common.
I'm
than
not
what
stepping
separates
forward if
us.
she's the future.
And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition
What up,
of the
Rico?
American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks
I
a
understand,
break and
Rico.
bringing down the cost of living.
It's been
I
very busy.
believe in what we can do together.
Welcome
That
in,
is
Rico.
about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right
Where
of a
did that
woman
come
to make
from?
decisions
Liberals don't stand for
about
that.
her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked
That
a
was
victim
hysterical.
or a witness, are you a Republican
So
or a Democrat?
insincere.
The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years.
Yes.
They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs, and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
Finally, these niggas went on and
Thank you
on
for
and on.
watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Well, my question to you, my brother, is what do you think happened tonight? Who did you give the W to?
To be honest, normally I was very strong behind Trump, but because of her strong showing, I'm going to have to vote for Kamala. I got you. No, Trump. Here's what it is. I think he won. I don't think he won as really as good as he could have. I think if there was an audience and it wasn't CNN, if it was a neutral party or let's face it, Fox, he would have trounced her.
I think he did actually, I'm just gonna say, man, I think he did a great job. He actually, for someone like me who doesn't need all the antics and shit like that, the fact that even his closing arguments, like, if she was going to do it, why hasn't she done it? And that's a philosophical and a very practical question. What has prevented you from doing the things that you said you were going to do? Okay, the obvious response is she's not president. But you ran on the platform, a shared platform, with a man who promised those things. You ran with a man who looked Black America right in the face and said, you had my back, so I'll always have yours. But still to this day, there's no hate black bill, right?
Right.
And this is something that people are clamoring about over in that group. You're probably wondering why I keep bringing up the revolutionary Black American.
Because you're a secret member of their cult, and
no, it's because I want them to also ask the question, why hasn't she done it yet? I don't give a fuck what college she went to. I don't give a fuck what sorority she stepped with.
Right, because that's meaningless virtue signaling.
What have you done, and why haven't you done it yet? What has prevented you from doing it? So these are the questions we got to ask. I think we have to ask these hard questions, right? So I'm gonna give the W to Trump, man. I would say that there were a couple of 10-8 rounds in there for him, and for her, she did better than I thought she was gonna do, for sure. I thought she was gonna fall apart, but she held it together, man. She held it together. But I'm still gonna give the W to Trump. That's where I stand, my brother.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. But still, I'm still nervous. As you should be. As you should be. 4 years ago, I thought Trump had it in the bag, so I wrote in Elmer Fudd or some shit. I didn't take it seriously. Maybe my one vote could have changed the whole thing. But no, the Dems cheated too well. But I will say, Trump definitely won this one, not by as far as I thought he would. Which means she's still a cunning opponent, not the greatest opponent, but we'll see. Who knows? Election day will come up. It'll sneak up on us, and sometimes you don't even realize. You know what I mean?
So without there being another debate, and debates losing the validity and importance since they're so how can I say this, biased as they are nowadays, what's going to happen next is what are they going to look like on the campaign trail? So if that Trump shows up, right, still galvanizing his base, but being able to speak clearly, I think that he might edge this thing out.
Yeah, no. I mean, hopefully that'll happen. Matt Cat says Steve is correct. We need another debate. A historic night, says ABC. The only thing historic about this is the historic failure of our media to remain fair and neutral. I agree. I absolutely agree. Matt Cat has a way of spitting facts, and there's just it just shows the corruption, how disgusting these ABC types of people are.
There are no journalists left in the world, my friend. There are only opinion pieces nowadays.
So,
everything is a contributor. You ever notice they all have the title contributor next to them? Right. And that's true. They might have gone to school for journalism, but they forgot the most important class that taught about journalistic integrity, right? Your job is to report the facts. That's it. Bring us the facts, man. I really don't want to hear your sob story.
So, one thing that's very interesting during the Republican debates that were once again held by Democratic-controlled CNN. And so they're at a debate with hostile liberal moderators. And my man Vivek is like, he says in his speech, he says, if we had half a brain, we would have had Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Steven Crowder, and a bunch of other guys put on the debate, and we would have 10 million views right now.
Right.
But instead, we're kowtowing to the system.
Yes.
And so it is horrible. It's a horrible state of what's going on. We'll see. I mean,
again, I remember when Joe Rogan, when people were saying he should have hosted the debates, the original debates against Trump and Biden, and I actually thought that was a great idea. But establishment media, right, just is so anti this type of movement, right? They hate the concept and the idea of a Joe Rogan to the point of lying, and that's a documented fact.
Yeah, they lied about every little thing about his life that try to turn him. And you notice that anytime they reference him, they're like the extreme alt writer, and I'm like, he's not even right. He's not even on the right. He's not a conservative.
No, he's not. He's not socially conservative, and in most ways that you would consider someone socially conservative. What he is a person, and I'm not giving him a pass for the monkey joke at all, man. Like if I was sitting in front of Joe Rogan, also remembering that he's a black belt, but still having balls, right? I'd be like, yeah, what the fuck did you mean by that?
So wait, hold on. I gotta say this. This is my opinion about times you have to go all the way back, and Trump brought it up in the debate today. He said they had to go back 30 years because they have nothing on me now, which is not true. They have a lot of shit on you, bro, right now. but it is funny they're bringing up something from 30 years ago. But like the whole concept is, because I am a Christian and I believe in forgiveness and change and growing as a person, I do not believe that going back 10 or more years is an appropriate way to cancel somebody.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And as a Christian, right, and someone who just used a lot of obscenity, so, I'm convicted over that, but sometimes it's just like it flies out, man. Here's the thing, right? We believe in forgiveness. We believe that a person, if they've repented for their sins, then they've turned over and there should be fruit to bear for it, right? I would levy the difference between a Christian and, say, just a normal secularist is my harsh critique of Trump is also extended to Kamala. And I just want people to be consistent in that. If you were to take a real legitimate look at her as a human being, as a politician, and as a person, and go over the span of her career, could you comfortably say that she has been ethical? And I think if you're willing to do that type of soul searching, you're probably going to come to the same conclusion that I've come to. Just like every other politician, she has been unethical, right? And I don't have any proof that she's going to turn over any leaves now. But fuck all that shit. I had fun tonight on Rumble, man.
Oh, I had a great time. Yo, and I didn't realize there would be so much love with the Rumble. You know what the problem is, though? We had almost no one in the room, and that's why I added YouTube. I was like, and I realized it's the YouTube notification system that brought people to our stream. Yeah. And so I'm all about ditching YouTube and being all like Rumble and Twitch and Kick. However, notifications. Because that's the thing. No, not many people knew we were live.
No, but they pour it in, man. For a small channel like ourselves, getting up to 20 people at one point here on Rumble.
And that's God bless them. God bless them all. We got Rogue Radio, who's keeping it super real. But a lot of people were D-Love, DT Dubs, poking. You know what I'm saying? We got Matt Cat always keeping it real. We got Izzy up in here. We got Rico who came late but still kept it real. We've got a great community here. I noticed the liberals didn't show up. We love them anyway. You know who you are. I know who you are. I knew they realized not to show up for this event because they knew like we were going to be talking shit the whole time, right?
But we talked shit about both of them. And again, like I said, man, and you know what? I don't even feel bad. I've talked so much shit about Trump on Fanboy. I've trolled you about his weakness as a candidate, but I have to also keep it a bean. He did a great job tonight. And I mean that. And you guys can go back across the span of our channel. I've given that motherfucker the work on this microphone, but he did a great job tonight. So, that's between you and God. If you don't like what I say, bro.
At the end of the day, as a Christian, you have to, there's no easy way because I would argue that both parties fight on some level for Christian ideals. Right. None of them are perfect. You have to just decide which one you can live with, and I know which one I can live with.
There we go, man. Folks, make sure you tune into our perspective shows over on Riz Radio. Burn Your Degree, Mic Check, Dope Dynamics. Shout out to DJ Sensi Star premiering this Monday. Had a great show on Riz Radio.
He did amazing. He did absolutely amazing.
Did really well, man. In fact, he did so well that I just spent 2 hours prior to the show getting my own playlist ready for Mic Check. That's right. 50 of your best unheard of underground songs. You need to know about these songs. Also got a blog coming out taking a shot at you frivolous ass hip hop fans, you fucking frivolous ass hip hop fans, man. Because I still want you to come by. I just don't like you that much, but I want you to support the channel.
I hate you, but support and subscribe and like, bitch. I had a great time. This was a good time. I hope everyone did. Matt says, you guys see the New York Times article on the Bob Iger and Bob Chapek drama? Was hoping to see you guys' thoughts on that debate. So actually, here's the problem with us appearing on debate night. I had so much fun, but there's so many stories we could have talked about. Like normally, there's no news, and of course, the week of the debate. There's mad news. And so things I want to talk about, all the civil war within the Star Wars community, because there is a civil war right now. Crazy things have happened this week.
Star Wars theory versus Star Wars explained.
Yeah, it's crazy to hear them. And we at some point we have to have an episode where we track all that. We go back and forth. He is absolutely right. The Bob Iger reveals. I couldn't believe some of the things I heard coming out of that. There's just a lot of other stories to be done. There's always fanboy modeling schooling to be done.
There always is.
And if only we could stream all the time.
Your boy Steve is going to check his calendar, and maybe we can get another show in for you guys this week, man. Y'all need a video app. Go ahead.
We are working on it. We are working baby steps right now. But right now, the best way you can support us is you go to rizradio.com. That's where you can read our blogs, hang out with us, and more importantly, listen to our station. Audio streaming online is dying. for video. Video's taking over. Basically, that's why online radio stations are more important than ever before. You need to check us out. That's where you're going to get the best of our takes. And if we're not doing a live stream, our DJs are going to be putting out blogs, so you can stay there with us. You can hit us up on social media to talk further about the topics. We're going to keep it extremely real. Remember, that is rizradio.com. It looks like we are taking off. Love you guys all. Live the dream. Cincy Star just shows up. I love you, Cincy Star. We did say you did great on Sunday. You did lovely. I'm going to talk to you about the performance, but otherwise, you did amazing. Keep up the good work. Anyway, guys, we are taking off. This is Fanboy Modeling School. I am the Fat Mantis. He is
Steve, real name, no gimmicks.
Awesome. And so we are out. And remember, vote Trump or you're a bitch. Peace. It didn't stick. We're